I'm going to have a quick look at two things today, actually. One was the title is Warm, Friendly, and Trustworthy, or Warm, Trustworthy, and Friendly, um, which is was the theme of a poll I did a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, asking, it was fairly binary, asking people if they'd like their leaders in their organizations to be warm and friendly and trusting, or the opposite of which would be more dictatorial and telling. And unsurprisingly, um, you're kind of knowing the answer to the question that I was asking. Unsurprisingly, everybody who answered that poll said warm, friendly, and trusting, please. I'd like my leaders to be warm, friendly, and trusting. Um, and why that's not unsurprising is because the alternative is really basically not listening to you, is telling you what to do the way they do. In fact, that was my last leader. I'm just a bit of a ramble here. My last, I mean, leader's a bit of a stretch. The last person who was in control of my performance review, put it that way, and my last employer was very much, no, you do it this way because this is the way I've done it, and this is the best way, or you don't, basically stay around. And people who have leaders who have that style of working um, tend to leave. They tend to not enjoy the work that they're doing because they don't have any element of them in the job that they're doing. Now, I understand there are certain professions and certain jobs where, mainly for safety reasons, but for also regulatory reasons, there has to be a strict way of doing something to get approval from the regulators or let's say air traffic control, that you can fly the plane or whatever it is. But even then, within that, there's a little bit of latitude. There's a little bit of freedom of expression that can come through. In the creative industry, clearly we want to have our own creative juices going into the work that we're doing. And in that way, we feel fulfilled in doing it. So the warm, friendly, and trusting leader is someone, and I have seen them, they do exist, I have seen them. There's someone who prefers to work as a team player. They can turn their hand to almost anything, but you recognize that they're the boss, and you respect them for doing what they're doing. Many years ago, and you can tell by the color of my hair, it truly was many years ago, I had a Saturday job. It was the thing that we did in those days. It was for the parents to kick the kids out of the house on Saturday so that they could go and work in a local supermarket or shop or something, or down the local garage, to earn some pocket money, get used to the idea of trading time for money. And I think the best example of one of these warm, trusting, friendly bosses was a guy called Stan Wheatley. You probably won't know him unless you were in the Fareham area, unless you were in the pharmaceutical area. Stan Wheatley took over the managership of the brand new big sparkling showcase Boots, the chemist store in the futuristic and amazing shopping mall in Fareham in Hampshire. Looks a bit dated these days, but that's the nature of time. Now, Stan, we had to fill this shop up, but we were getting deliveries almost by the hour, and boxes were coming in, and we had to take the contents of the box and store them in the storeroom efficiently so that, frankly, we could find them again once we knew they were needed on the shop floor. But they're created a huge pile of cardboard. And even in those days, so long ago, recycling was a thing. We bundled up all the cardboard and put them in a compressor machine and put some tape around them so they could be taken away and be recycled. Well, the volume of goods coming into the shop was enormous. And so the volume of boxes that need to be split open, flattened, and stacked in this compressor just grew and grew and grew. And one day I was there by myself going through it, and Stan came along and said, I think you need a hand there, Martin. And he took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and started breaking boxes and packing them into this machine with me. Um, and that stuck with me for a long, long time. That's someone who loves to play as a team player, can step out of their role. Is not totally always going, I'm the boss, you get on and do that. I'll find someone else to help you. He got stuck in. And this guy had a huge amount of respect, not only from me in that organization, but everyone else at Boots the Chemist in Fareham, to the point that he generated a more um, like a family feeling that people knew each other. Yes, there were squabbles. He'd sort out the squabbles with them, not for them. And he'd make sure that he was there if people needed him, and also allowed people the trusting bit. The trusting bit. I trust you to get on with this. I know you can. You said you will. I trust you to do it. And none of this checking up. None of this looking over my shoulders to see if I was doing the right thing. And same for everybody on every department. We had 2 floors in those days, on both floors. So staying in touch with the people, trusting them to do their job, being warm, open, friendly, the good morning, how are you type of stuff was natural. It wasn't a forced thing that he did. If he wanted to or not, it was kind of that thing that he did because he could. Um, and the whole thing ticked along nicely. He retired later, and many years later, I went into the shop and I just mentioned to someone, and they knew him. He hadn't been in the shop for ages, but they knew of him. He had a legacy that really spanned way beyond his time in the store. So that's warm and friendly and trusting. So there's no wonder people prefer that style. If you're a leader, I urge you to cultivate those behavioral traits in your leadership. The more you trust people to get on and do the things that you've encouraged them to do without checking up, the more they're going to do it. There will be some that kind of shirk and take the mickey, but you either get them back to where you want them to be through encouragement, or you have that conversation and ask, is this the right place for you? Sometimes it's not. Let's face it. The other one that I put a poll out on Monday. God, this week's only Wednesday and it seems so long already. On Monday was to ask about how you make decisions. And the reason that came to me was because, a lot of these lives are hinged on me using psychometrics. And I've been using one quite heavily over the past month or so. And it's the one from Human Synergistics, the leadership work styles of their suite of amazing assessments. And the approval thing came up. So I'm working with a couple of teams in an organization, and one of the teams in particular has, they all have, don't get me wrong, when you look at the development opportunities, pretty much every team has a cluster of people who could do with understanding how to listen to people. Seems fairly fundamental, but listening skills is something to work on. But the other thing that this particular team had, and again, it's not too unusual, there were people there who lacked the self-confidence to step into their own power through fear, perhaps, of failing or looking foolish, or just a lack of self-belief. Their colleagues can see in them what they're capable of, but when they choose to step up, the fear barrier gets in the way. And it's a cliche, but it's true. Everything you desire is on the other side of fear. Everything you want, you think you could deserve, and you bounce up against some fear in you that stops you doing it. And it's just in your head. It's a program that's been running for many, many years. If you think back to it, really think back, maybe with a bit of help and a bit of visualization techniques and so on, you can locate probably the time in your life when you first realized that you were doing this, and you were doing it for all good reason. You were doing it because that's how you knew how to survive. in the area and situation you were growing up in. But like many of these habits, they come beliefs, and the beliefs then, well, they're true, aren't they? Because it's a belief. And you kind of live it. And other people are telling you, no, there's more to you than this. You're better than this. You deserve more than this. And you're going, yeah, but it's scary. I don't know. I know I want it, but anyway, I'm a bit embarrassed, to be honest. Don't want to step out there. I mean, supposing I fall over. Well, people do, but do you know what? They get back up again, just like the toddler you were when you learned how to walk. But the other question, the question of the poll that I did on Monday, was about taking decisions. And quite a few people in one of these teams seem to need to have the approval of others before they'll take a decision. And that comes back to a fair bit of conflict within themselves. They're sensitive to the feelings of others. They might have to take a decision which, in their mind, is going to upset someone. They don't want to upset people. Gosh, no one wants to upset anyone. But it's the best decision to take. It's the thing that needs to happen. And then when the decision is taken, actually everyone goes, it was difficult, but it was the right thing to do. So a lot of approval going on, a lot of seeking the advice from others, talking around the topic before making a decision. The question on the poll was, are you someone who can make a decision very quickly? I'm looking up there because there's a wall, and on the wall is nothing, but it reminds me of what I put on the poll because I haven't looked. Are you someone who takes decision? Are you someone who seeks approval? And then there are others in the head versus heart, which wins? Does your prefrontal cortex override what your gut feeling is telling you? Gut feeling, heart, intuition, what your intuitive self is telling you? Or do you allow your intuition to guide you and then take the decision based on that? And there is a mixed response. Key thing is it depends on the topic. Yeah, it depends on the topic. It depends on the enormity of the decision I have to take, the seriousness of the decision. Well, often big decisions are defined by the amount of time you spend on taking them. And yeah, I'm not saying every decision is a trivial decision, because there are things like, I'm going to buy a house. I want this house. I need to borrow this amount of money. Am I able to repay back that loan from the bank or the bank in order to secure my tenure in that house? So that's a decision that is based on a number of different factors. But many decisions are fairly binary. If I do this, will that happen? What will happen if I don't do this? There's questions around binary. Now, in the binary scenario, very often there's a solution that is kind of very obvious. The water temperature is like 4 degrees centigrade. Do I want to go in it? Well, the answer is no for me. Knock yourself out, all you cold water swimmers, but I'm not getting into cold water that's 4 degrees centigrade. In fact, I'm not getting into cold water that's less than 20 degrees centigrade. So that's just the way I am. So very binary, very fixed. Sometimes, though, there's a little bit of ambiguity in the question. There's a little bit of, well, we could do A and we could do B, and there's benefits to both and there's a downside to both. So I'm not sure which one I'm going to take. There's an old story I heard many, many years ago about a CEO who was renowned for taking fantastic decisions. He built a company up from not very big to being hugely successful. and he was retiring, and they figured out who's going to take over. And as they looked at the people, and the day came close, they nominated who's going to take over from the CEO, and they had a party, and the retiring was going out, and the new guy was coming in, and they did a nice handover. And then the CEO said, "Follow me. I have some pearls of wisdom." And the incoming CEO went, "Oh, that's amazing! I'm going to find the secret to taking great decisions." And sure enough, they went into a private office, and he said, "Oh, dear boy, thank you for taking over the realm of this company. I've taken it from nothing to being amazing, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do the same. But there's something you might need to know about how to take decisions." And they go, "Oh, this is it. This is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for." He said, "Well, most of the time, the decision's clear. We have choice of one or two, and we choose one because everybody sees it the same way." Yes, I get that. I understand that. But sometimes it's a little bit more difficult and a little bit ambiguous. And he said, here we go. This is the secret. He said, "What do you do then?" He said, "Well, when I'm not sure, I put my hand in my pocket and I've got some coins. And I just grab a few between my fingers, and then I count them back into my pocket. So no one sees them doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's an odd number of coins, I choose A. And if it's an even number of coins, I choose B." And the guy, like, he's going, "What? That's not a decision. That's random. That's crazy." He said, "Oh, no. So much time, so much momentum, so much forward movement in business is wasted by not taking a decision. You lose more with inactivity than you do by taking the wrong decision." He said, "Yeah, supposing it is the wrong decision you've chosen, well, then we can adjust. There isn't a pilot that flies from London to Melbourne that doesn't first set all the settings and go, oh, let autopilot take on, maybe. But they have to adjust. Things happen, weather happens, wind happens, they get blown off course. If you didn't adjust, you probably wouldn't land in Melbourne. So adjustments are natural. Adjustments are what you do because you're a good leader and you can see things and you can preempt. And yes, sometimes it's not the best decision, but it's movement that informs you that your decision was not the best decision, that you can then adjust and make changes later. And that was a bit of an eye-opener for one of the groups I worked with yesterday. But we went on a little bit further because sometimes people really, really do get stuck. And there's a good lesson I learned from my NLP training, to ask yourself 4 questions. There are 4 questions that can really help you out of a big whole dilemma, be it your relationship, be it your job, be it something in your job that you have to make a decision on. And the 4 questions are, what's going to happen if I do this? So you take the decision and you do it. And then you say, but what won't happen if I do this? So clearly by changing things, you do this, but something else isn't going to get done because you've chosen to do this instead. So what will happen if I do this? What won't happen if I do this? And then you have the opposites. What will happen if I don't do this? So I'm choosing not to do this. So what will happen if you don't? And then what won't happen if you don't? And what won't happen if you don't? So you have sorry, I should have written it down. What will happen if you do this? What will happen if you don't do this? What won't happen if you do this? And what won't happen if you don't do this? Now, you can mull those questions over now and think about them, but I urge you to create a 2x2 box, quadrant thing, 4 corners, and put 1 question in each of those 4 boxes. And then next time you come to the dilemma, look at it and actually sit down, think, and write the answers into the boxes under each of those questions. Write them down. Don't. If we just sit there and mull it over, you'll get lost in, like I did, in all the muddle of which of those 4 questions are you answering. So sit down and give yourself space. Give yourself absolute space. Now, one of the challenges with people that seek approval for them is an understanding that they probably always had to ask for approval or being given permission by someone to do what they want to do. It's not as direct as, yes, go ahead and do that. But it comes back, a lot of stuff that we struggle with really comes back to our early days of filling the space between our ears with ideas and logic and understanding of how the world that we've been brought into operates. If you think about it, right from the word go, and I'll probably repeat this in lives going forward because I am kind of passionate about it, our neurological network and brain development is fairly primitive when we're born. The reptilian brain, the bit at the back, is the first to develop. Then we have the midbrain, and then the prefrontal cortex comes later. And we're not fully developed until, I don't know, 20 years. It's crazy, isn't it? So we're learning all this stuff in a non-fully developed brain. But we're learning it mainly, and most of life is about survival. We're understanding what it is we need to do at a certain time in order to get our needs met, like feeding, cleaning, temperature control, sleeping, all that sort of stuff, stimulation. We learn how to prod our caregivers to give us what we need. And then we start to question it. And quite often we see things in our environment that we don't understand, and we take on a belief about that, and I'll come on to that in another episode, that we stick with that belief for the rest of our life, and it doesn't help us, because it helped us when we were 3 or 4 years old, because that's survival. But the survival environment we're in now is completely different. No, okay, get over that. But the approval piece is basically being brought up into an environment where you didn't have to make a choice because everything was given for you, so you don't know how to make a decision, or decisions were always completely made for you, and you never got the practice. If you're the caregiver, the loving parent of a youngster these days, please, whatever you do, help them make decisions, even if it's, do you want the pink socks or the blue socks, whatever, and they choose it and they live with it. It's, do you want the beans or the Brussels? You can have both, but they make a choice. Just simple to you, non-consequential choices, but they're making a decision, and you allow them to stick with it. That way they'll grow up into healthy adults that can take decisions and not be sitting on the spectrum of seeking approval. Now, in the workplace, the approval seeker is seen as, they're very difficult to work with, because people want decisions to be made. And they are often people who are kind of seen as acquiescing to a higher authority. They lacking the courage of their convictions to say, no, I've done it this way. This is my style, and we have to live with the consequences. Approval seekers are let me see, it's a passive way of avoiding a conflict sometimes as well. So there's a lot to unpack in that. But what I encourage you to do, if you find yourself in that area, or you find yourself working with people who are in that area, is to allow them to make those decisions. They don't need approval. If you're a leader and you've got people like that in your team, trust them. Be the warm, trusting, affiliative type leader who cares for their people and encourages them to take the decisions with that lovely line that great leaders have. Go for it. If it goes wrong, I've got your back. Give them that safety net so that if it goes wrong, but you are the trusting, warm, friendly leader, so they can. It's just them that don't know. So I hope that's been helpful today. I've been playing with a new streaming software. I'm not sure I got it all on LinkedIn. I'm hoping I got it on my YouTube channel. I'll replay it from there. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Maybe not as hot as it is today. And we'll talk about something else. We probably will be talking about how people always do the same thing, being conventional and not creative in their work. If you've got any questions, let me know. Put it in the comments. If you've got anything you need to know anymore, just see me through the contacts on the LinkedIn page, and let's have a chat. But until then, keep taking those decisions. Don't worry about what other people think. And I look forward to hearing how you get on next time. Keep well.